we're glad to announce now that Engineer Umar Ibrahim can now join us. So Engineer Umar Ibrahim will be speaking on the impact of armed banditry on communities, on human life, and on socio-economic development. Umar.
Hello, good morning. Yes, it is my pleasure to be on this occasion and to speak on a topic that has really hit my own community very well. Banditry, as the keynote speaker has said, who has speaking eloquently and has dealt with the problem right from historical moment. But there's something I would like to share with all of us. Having been in this part of the country and from the Northwest and from Katsina, where this is very, very extremely heat. Now, around 2013, 2014, just before the election, here in Kano, we had an experience which is new. One, the headsmen, the Fulani people, their cattle were rusted, and some of them were kidnapped, and they have to pay ransom. This happened within the local government of Sumaila, Jogwa, and Tudunwada. It became a very serious menace that there's a forest called Fargoro Forest that even military has to be placed there permanently before the thing came down with it. Now, while this was going on, issues were raised that these people have no any other livelihood except these cows. And if their loved ones will continue to be kidnapped, and then they have to pay ransom, and they don't have any other means of any income except this cattle, and they have to sell these cattle to get money to pay back the ransom, what will happen when they lost livelihood? I think this is from the point where I believe those in governance were not able to get it right, because this continues unabated and these planning people feel being cheated. And eventually they turn back and they to join the wagons of the kidnapping and the banditry. And this is the case of Dogwa. In my home state of Katsina and in my local government, Faskari local government area, the predominant occupations there is cattle rearing and farming activities. It's an area where we are known for growing of maize, guinea corn, millet, groundnut, soya beans. And it's also an area that is endowed with forest, where you can get economic trees like mangoes, locust beans, etc. Now, when this started in that area, no arrest, or let me say, those who were arrested, you cannot have any justice being served on them, which will serve as deterrent those who are wishing to commit or who are wishing to follow the same path. And unfortunately, the same as it happened in Dogwa, Sumaila, and Tudunwada of Kano State, it also continued to happen in Faskari local government area. That is my local government, the neighboring local government of Sabwa, and Endumi local government. And these are areas with very, very fertile land and very vast forest for grazing. And because it's an area that has share of its own problems with farmers, herders conflict, there are some grazing fields that were strictly reserved for grazing. And these expand through so many kilometers and through so many local government and even up to neighboring Niger Republic. Now, let's look at how does this impact on the economies. I was able to have a chat with a person called Malan Idi from Ungwambika. That is just a village miles away from my hometown, Faskari. And I asked him what was his ordeal. He now told me that the land that their own village is coming under attack late at midnight, and they were able to run for safety. And he took a different path, the family took a different path, different dimensions, And when he arrived at the local government, he had to stay with his friends. Now, his main occupation is farming and the rearing of goats and some few cattle. Upon staying there for some time, he feel no, he cannot just stay and be a parasite. He should at least go back there. At least those people might have left his village, and then he can get, even if it's a bag of either maize or guinea corn, so that he can bring back to the main local government headquarters and continue to stay with his friend. Meanwhile, he does not know the whereabouts of his own family, and he has no any clue on how to trace them. He took the risk of going back, and while getting there, the village was deserted. He entered his house, but on coming out, unfortunately, he met the bandits and he was kidnapped. And it took a whole lot of time before there was communication and he could trace his people. And then he told me he has to pay 100,000 naira to guarantee he's released. Up till this moment, he still lives in the local government headquarters with no means of livelihood. You still have to beg for alms to eat or have to do some very, very hectic physical work to get some incomes. Now, what I want to draw our attention from this small story of Malang Idi of Ngobika village in Faskari local government area of Katsina State. He is a very productive man who has a farmland where he grows his crops for his basic needs and even more that he sells to the larger community. With these bandits there in the forest and close to his village, he cannot go to farm, meaning his means of livelihood has been stopped. This is just the case of one person. What of the rest of the villagers who are also out there at different locations and coming for safety? Now, if you take my local government, Pascal local government is on the route from Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara to Kano, which is the commercial nav center. People come from all these areas to Kano to buy goods and then take back and sell to earn livings. And one of the easy and shortcut period they have to pass is to pass through Ankara, where those secondary school boys were kidnapped. And that route has become a serious menace. Though of recent, I've learned that military presence has been made available. But so many people were kidnapped, so many. At times, if you are fortunate, coming from a distance, you could spot the danger. And if you stay, you will see how vehicles, especially commercial vehicles, were stopped state of Zamfara, Katsina, Kano, Kebbi, and Sokoto. It means it's been put in danger. Now, what happened when the trading activity stopped on these places? It means basic things of life will not be obtained. So, I want you all to think, if this thing continues and as is still going on, it means this local government admission of Sabwa, Faskari, and Dume, which have a link with the Binungwari in Kaduna State, and the same forests have a link with invariably this will also at greater length affect the food security of this country, because you need maize for poultry feed. If we don't have enough maize, it means the poultry feed will be very, very expensive. It means it will also affect the industries that needs this maize to produce the feed. And if they could not get this maize, it means they will have to retrench the workers they employ. And in earnest, it means also those people rearing poultry, they will not be able to have the feed to feed their birds. And we will not be able to have poultry eggs, which is a source of protein, major source of protein for our young lads, for their own nutritional value. So this is where we are. And unfortunately, the area is so vast, like the speaker of or the presenter of the keynote address has mentioned. And apart from this local government headquarters, you will have notice that you can't find a policeman anywhere in these interior villages. You can't have any government presence. The traditional institutions that normally were used to convey messages to these people has also been disrupted. For instance, my uncle, who is a village head in Bilbis, which is a neighboring town of Bilbil in Safe local government, has to abandon his own village and move to safety. He has to abandon his own village and move to safety. So you can see how terrible these things are. I also wish to bring to your notice that the way we started schools, especially in the north, the schools were started outside the towns. And the science secondary school in my local government, immediately you cross over, you are entering into the bandits den. The only fortunate things we have is that there is a camp, military super camp within the local government. There's a joint task force just adjacent to the school. So we'll not have issues of school being kidnapped. But like if you take the case of Engr, this is a boarding school. There are women who normally cook food for these boys. There are people who have to scavenge for firewood and take to these schools, which they use to cook these foods. Now, when the school is closed down, what happened to their source of livelihood? How do these people earn a living?
Engineer Umar Ibrahim at this point. Engineer Umar Ibrahim, I want to thank you very much for your contribution. But considering the time we have, we probably just need to go on. We still have the questions and answers from you. We heard from Engineer Umar Ibrahim graphic details, sometimes horrifying details of the impact on human life and communities, on socio-economic development of armed banditry. It's the Big Ideas podium of the African Heritage Institution. And today, the big idea is trends and dynamics of armed banditry. We had the keynote address from the Executive Director of the African Network for Peace Building, Accra, Ghana, Dr. Chukwuemeka B. Eze. We had contributions from Dr. Kingsley Ude Espoir, who is Special Advisor to the Governor of Enugu State on Education, on the impact of armed banditry on education and human capital development. We also heard from Dr. Anthony Odo Agbo of the Department of Sociology of the Federal University, Wukari, Taraba State. We talked about the impact of armed banditry on families, livelihoods, and human society. And just a minute ago, we had Engineer Umar Ibrahim talking about the impact of armed banditry on communities, on human life, and on socio-economic development. Now it's time to take your contributions, your questions, and some of the opinions you may hold. But because of the time we have, we shall limit this to very brief contributions.